Hey guys, welcome to another video. In this one you'll see the install journal / review of me installing a carbon fiber prop shaft from the Driveshaft shop on my 2017 Mustang automatic. So there's two versions of this drive shaft. I have a slightly older one because I bought it used. I'm not made of money, and if I can spot a good bargain, I'm going to take advantage of that. So yeah, follow it through. There was a lot of learning on my part on this install because of all of the extra modifications I've got on my car. So if you've got those, which you probably do because no one goes out and puts on a carbon fiber or one-piece drive shaft as a first install, you've usually modified your suspension in one way or the other, and that's going to have a huge consequence on whether the drive shaft will go in easy or it's going to need some persuasion. So enjoy the video, and I'll give you guys a review of what it's like to have the car, have it installed in the car as well at the end. Any questions, I'm always happy to answer them, and comment below. Cheers.
So I bought this drive shaft hardly used. It has very low mileage on it because new ones are very expensive, particularly in the UK. You're looking at upwards of like £2,200. So you know that's too much. I can't even justify that. So, but I got a great deal on this. I bought this from the States and I imported it over. It was missing a lot of hardware, I will say this. The only things that I got with it were, actually, let me just show you guys these. This is all I got with it. So when I started to look at it, I was like, this can't be right. I need more hardware. So I got in touch with Driveshaft Shop. They quoted me a reasonable amount for the pack, the kit that it comes with. So the kit that this is has a nameplate on it, so it's FDPL18, and then this has a name on it as well. Just gonna see if I can show you. It's very difficult to see, but you might be able to just about see it there. See that there? That little mark. Yeah, there. So that says PL18. FPL's 18 or something, I'm not sure. I've got it written up, and they do a pack for about 25 bucks, all the hardware that you need plus shipping. So the international shipping was coming out to be about 94 bucks, 75 bucks. So with the hardware it would have been 100 bucks plus the tax I would have had to pay, so it would have ended up being like 110, 120 pounds, which is too much. The other option was to have it shipped to an address in the US, and then it was, I think shipping was about 20 bucks and 25, which is a lot more reasonable, but then I would still have to have them shipped over here, still pay taxes, and so it wasn't working out. But on the invoice they had the stats for these bolts, so I managed to source those in the UK through Orbital Fasteners, which is what we have in the UK, which is very good. Came up pretty quick, so I ordered some spares as well, which I've got lying around here. A load, just in case, you never know, because the shipping was being expensive, so I thought I'd get free shipping through that way, so that was fine. So yeah, I'm not going to use the old hardware, but if you are going to get a used one of these, then you need to make sure you have 4 bolts. I believe they're M12 for the front adapter, and they go straight through the adapter into the gearbox. 6 bolts and washers for this bit to go into here, and then 6 bolts, just bolts, no washers, because it's a very snug fit, which go from this to the pinion. So what happens is these go in here, this attaches to the pinion, and then creates a mating surface for this, and then you can bolt these into that, through that, which is your rear end done, and the front is just adapter. This is the old variant. The new variant doesn't have this adapter. It's just bolts straight on to the to your gearbox. Here we are. There's our carbon fiber one-piece prop shaft. with all the necessary hardware. So you have the 4 bolts and the adapter plate towards the gearbox side, and you have the pinion adapter with 6 bolts with a short head, and then you have the 6 bolts with a spring washer that then ties into the flange. One of the important things is you need to make sure that this gap is between 3 1/4 to 3 3/4 inches. Mine's fine, so make sure you check that, because if it isn't, then apparently you have to send the drive shaft back to DSS, and then they, I guess, sort it out. And then also make sure that, you know, the marks are lined up, which mine were. And then the critical one really for balancing is that you match the adapter plate mark with the mark on the joint. So again, this is to do with the balancing and make sure that we don't get any unwanted vibrations. I've just put pink, magenta or pink, whatever you want to call it, over the white lines because they will be getting hard to see, so it's a bit more obvious to look at. Yep, so this one didn't have a mark on it, the adapter. I'm guessing it's because it sits inside the phalange. It's a very small piece, so there shouldn't be any issues on that side, but this did, so very important. And yeah, that's the piece. My next step is going to be, as you can see, I'm quite fortunate that I've got a lift and the car is off the ground now. I'm glad I've got a lift. I've got some carpet tiles over there because the floor is a little bit uneven. Not the end of the world, I'll just pack it with something later on, maybe with these carpet tiles, but you know, it's fine. Difficult to get the leveling right on the concrete floor considering how much I've done. And then what I'm going to do now is basically get in there, and I have to take the exhaust off. So I have a friend coming, Alex, who you've probably seen before, who's going to help me with this. I could, if I wanted to, just put a bit of, here's my hand, timber across from that platform to the other platform, and then I could just drop the exhaust and it should be fine because it will just hold the exhaust in place. But it's always healthy having 2 pairs of hands instead of the 1, so he's gonna get it. But in the meantime, I'm gonna start marking up the exhaust, various pieces, wherever there's a joint where the axle back joint is, where I've got the H-pipe joints, and at the front as well. I'm just gonna put lines on them just to make sure that when I put the exhaust back, I make those marks line up and it goes back to exactly the way it was, because I'm actually very happy with the fitment of this exhaust. So I'm just gonna put this down and you guys can watch me do that. So in terms of tools, you need 1/2-inch ratchet, 3/8 ratchet, and then you will need a 15mm socket for your exhaust clamp if you've got a stock exhaust at the top, or the cats, and 13mm for the exhaust clamps at the back, and then a 12mm and a 13mm to take off the existing prop shaft. That's literally, I think, all you need to remove the factory prop shaft. Well, yeah, so that's to undo all the bolts. And then our prop shaft got stuck, so for that you will need a rubber mallet, and if that's not persuasive enough, you will need a metal hammer. My exhaust was a bit difficult to come off, so I used a piece of wood and just used a rubber mallet to hammer it sort of towards the back, and that would treat. My prop shaft out also didn't come off very easily. So what I initially tried to do was to put a long screwdriver in the CV joint and try and twist it with a light tap of a hammer, but it didn't come off. So what I ended up doing was use a chisel. So you don't use it this way, so this end is towards the gearbox side, and then you just gently tap it between the two plates with the metal hammer, and it comes off a little bit. Turn it, do it again, and it will come off very easily. I would say if it's stuck, then just do that. It probably will be. So you need a thin wooden chisel for that. Then to put on your DSS drive shaft, you might need, well, you will need H7. So I've got a couple of those. Well, H7, that's the only one that I've got, which is an extended one. You will need a H10. H7, H10. So I've got a H10 small one as well. Which one is this? H8. And I've got an extension for that as well. So this is for the bolts that connect the adapter to the pinion, and then you get the H8 bolts which go from the drive shaft into the pinion adapter, and then this is for the big bolts which go through the adapter to the gearbox. Then you'll need a couple of torque wrenches. So this is my big one, and this is my small one. Most of the work was done using the smaller one, but what I found was the head was too thick on this one. When I put the when I was putting on the drive shaft with the H8, so I found another one that I had which was a bit slimmer, and it did the job a bit better. So that as well. 18-inch spanner. So the reason not 18mm spanner. The reason I need to have that along with this 21mm socket was because my drive shaft wouldn't go into place in between the gearbox and the differential. That's because I've got the Steeder differential bushings installed, as well as the IRS bracing, so everything is tight, everything is braced, and there's literally no give in the diff. So I had to undo, well, not completely undo, loosen my diff bolts at the front to allow me to get 2 pry bars, so the great persuaders, 1 and 2, in between the IRS and the drive shaft, between the diff, pull it so it pulls the diff back, allowing me to get the plate, not the plate, the prop shaft or the drive shaft in place, and then when you let it go, it's fine. The problem is that towards the back where the diff end of the prop shaft is, or the drive shaft is, it has like a dome, which means that although the drive shaft can fit, but that dome prevents you from fitting it in place because it gets in the way. But it's okay because that dome usually sits in the hollow bit of the diff pinion, so that's okay. But if you run into that problem, don't waste your time. Just undo the 2 bolts of your diff. I undid some of my IRS bolts as well, but I don't think you need to. So just try the diff first, and you should be okay. A few extensions for the tightening of the hex bolts at the gearbox side, and you should be good to go. The consumables you will need: WD-40 in case your stock drive shaft is stuck, and some brake cleaner as well. And because I used the WD-40 to also clean out the existing blue Loctite and the bolt threads from factory, and then use the brake clutch cleaner to degrease those holes. Then obviously you will need some Loctite. I really like this. It's a sort of a prick stick, like a glue, so you just put it on. It's really good. And that's pretty much all the tools you will need. Take your time, set aside, I think, once you watch this video, and now that you've got the advice, you set aside, I would say 4 to 5 hours to do the install correctly. The other thing you would need is a pen. Once you've torqued each bolt, mark it. It's very important because you have to do it in a star pattern. Otherwise you will forget which ones you've torqued and which ones you haven't torqued, because you can't just torque them all without having to spin the drive shaft. So yeah, very important to have those. So what I did was every time I hand tightened anything, I made a dot to say it's got Loctite and hand tighten, and once I tightened it with a torque wrench, I converted the dot into a full line to let me know that yes, it has been torqued. That's all the tools. Enjoy the video, and I'll get you guys a review of how I find it towards the end. That's the marks done now, and now I just wait for my buddy and I get some tools together, and yeah, get to it. Okay, we're ready for the install. First things first, we got to get the exhaust removed. The way we are going to do it is take those two bolts off, and these will still hang because they've got clips at the top, so you can see those clips are there. There, so these will still hang, and then these hangers, one on each side, I'm going to take the bolts off as well, and then this will just come loose, but the exhaust is not going to go anywhere because it'll still be stuck there. As you can see, I've got a H-pipe installed, so I just plan on loosening the two clips at the cat and then just sliding it off, putting it down, and hopefully just moving it out of the way. That's all I want to do with the exhaust. That should give us enough room to get in there and start working on the factory 2-piece drive shaft. So before you get to work, if you're using an impact gun, make sure you got some ear protection. Make sure you wear some eye protection as well, and then you should be cooking. And 13mm sockets for these two and these here, and my clamps are 13mm as well, but I think on the stock one they're 15mm. So it's up to you which sockets you want to use. The rear hanger bolts are removed, well, the middle ones. The rear ones are gone as well. 1, 2. They're all still clipped in there. And what I tend to do is I make bags, so I know where these bolts came from there. So these are my bags, and then I've also loosened my clips, and I'm just going to leave them on there. So this exhaust is now ready to come off, and then we can get to work on this puppy over there. exhaust is off. Whew, this thing's heavy. This thing is heavy. Definitely a two-man job. What we figured out, and what Alex said as well, is actually leave the bolts and these here in there, because then when you come to remove the exhaust that way, these sort of hold the exhaust in place. So yeah, just it's a good thing to leave those on. So yeah, now we're gonna take the factory prop shaft off. Run into a bit of a problem. Everything was going smoothly. We removed the exhaust, we removed the bolts from the diff pinion flange, we removed the bolts from the gearbox, right out of the way. We removed, everything was great. We thought, like the videos show on the internet, you know, that it would just come off, but not so. So I've spoken to one of my friends. He's a master tech at Ford. He advises me that they do get stuck. So he's given me a tip, and yeah, I'm gonna try that. It should work because it makes sense, and I'll report back to you guys how it is. But in the meantime, y'all can see the car all up in the very messy, but we're gonna have to tidy up after this bit is done. Peace out. So after a lot of FANNYING around, we've got the prop shaft off, and ours was jammed on, like really jammed on. As you can see, it's rusted to hell, really stuck on. So the best way, and this is advice from one of my friends, Paul, who's a master tech, because everything else failed, we tried everything, is just to get a thin wooden chisel, wood chisel, like really sharp, make sure there's no rough edges to it, put it around here in between the surface of the gearbox and the prop shaft, and then 1 or 2 gentle taps on each corner will mean it comes off very easily actually. But we tried everything. We've got a screwdriver in between the U-joint and tried to hammer the screwdriver lightly so it would like spin and come off. We put WD-40 penetrant in there, and to be honest I think that helped a lot, but we finally got it out. It's like delivering a baby. So women, don't tell me that I don't know what it feels like to deliver a baby. I know. Try pushing that out.
So here we are, we've got the adapter plate going on. So there's a lot of leftover blue Loctite in there. So what I did was I put some WD-40 in there, and then just got the little screws that you use, bolts that you use to put the flange on. I've got spare, so I use the spare one to basically hand tighten, and then use the ratchet to just clean everything out. I have to go in there 1 or 2 times. I don't have taps, so that cleaned them all out. Then I just used some brake cleaner to clean all the grease out. Then the other thing I found is that this adapter plate doesn't just go in like, you know, like a glove. So I'm putting the bolts in without any Loctite, and I'm just gonna use them to pull the adapter plate into place, and then I'm gonna take them all out, and I'm gonna apply Loctite, and then I'm gonna torque them up to spec, which is I think 57 foot-pounds. So that's what we're doing. camera angle right. You gotta give the people what they want. Like, I'm happy with how tight this is fitting in, you know?
Cool. And it's all talked to the right spec. So what was it, 45?
45. Right.
So push this in and then put the bolts in.
First thing first, let's get one of these.
That's right on this. Goes nice.
We've got to clean all that.
These ones, what?
Yeah, I could clean these out as well. So they're full of really blue rock types.
Wait, so he supplied these ones?
No, the actual housing inside.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Right. Actually, is the adapter in there?
The adapter I've got down here, yeah.
No, it needs to be on. Sure.
What? Just loose?
No, it needs to be on.
But the bolts don't actually screw into this, do they? Oh, I see what you mean. Just fit it in there. I've got it in my hand. I thought you saw it. This needs lining up. Just goes in, doesn't it?
So I'm going to give you the bolts as well. To be able to just hang tight. So they hold it in place.
Well, have we got the bit as well? Because this one is a lot bigger for the table. Invoices in there on the floor. I think it's 25 quid. It's on the floor just for now.
So I'll take the invoice and I'll put the money in, yeah?
No, I was talking to him and he couldn't do
Just
it.
put one in there.
Okay. No, I think it's
Just slightly off.
probably. Oh yeah, it's
So that's it. This is why you use the bolts to do that.
So can I just hit this softly?
Day 2 of the install. So the problem we ran into was that the drive shaft wasn't fitting in. It was 2 or 3 millimeters too long, really. So we tried everything to get it in, but it wouldn't work. And the reason for that is because I've got a lot of bracing on the IRS, and including the stated diff bushings, which means there's no play whatsoever. So we thought about it last night in terms of what we could do. And I've got the BMR CB762 as well, which is the bracing for the IRS. So we loosened the bolts towards the front, which are the big IRS bolts. I think they're 21 mil, 23 mil, and then we loosened the diff bushing bolts as well, and that's given us enough play to get the drive shaft in. And the problem isn't that the drive shaft is too long, period. The problem is we just couldn't get it into place, and because the pinion is a ring basically, and inside it is a hollow space, and that's where like a protruding bit of the drive shaft sort of sits. So once it's in place and tightened, it's not going to be an issue. It will just be really tight and snug in there, and it should be good. So yeah, we'll pick this up once the drive shaft is on. So yeah, 1/2 inch please. 3/8 to 1/2 inch. It's in there. We're just tightening up some of these bolts here, which we loosen. So BMR, cradle, pure BMR. And these are what we had to loosen. So I've torqued them back up and I've marked them, so I'll keep checking for their movements.
was it. As you can see, it was relatively smooth. It is a 2-guy job. You can do it on your jack stands, you will need 4, but I can't imagine it being easy. I'm quite fortunate in that I have a lift, and even then it was a bit of a pain in the backside. I've said this many times in the video before, in the beginning as well. The worst part for us was the drive shaft wouldn't fit. No matter what we did, it wouldn't fit, and that's because of all the other modifications that I've got on the car. And the only way it could was we had to loosen the diff bolt, pry it back, and well, one person pried it back, and then the second person put it in, and because then when he let go of the diff, then it just sits there. So it is a 2-man job really. You won't be able to do that on your own. So get a friend, set aside some time, offer him a barbecue or whatever, and you should be good. Apart from that, the only other challenging bit was the existing drive shaft wouldn't come off because it was sort of rusted and stuck onto the gearbox plate side, flange, whatever, and we had to use a wooden chisel. So let's say if that's the gearbox flange and this is the drive shaft, so we put it in there with this side because you won't be able to get it straight like this, and I didn't want to damage the gearbox plate, so like that, and it's perfectly straight against the gearbox. A couple of gentle taps, turn the prop, a couple more, and it just pops right off. So if it's stuck, don't waste your time with anything else. Do this and you save yourself a lot of headache and a lot of time. We basically stopped working for that day because we were just so annoyed because we just couldn't figure out why it wouldn't fit. So yeah, do that and you should be okay. In terms of living with the drive shaft, honestly, I think it's probably one of the best mods that I've done, top 5 at least. How I can explain it is, when I got the supercharger, when I did the supercharger install, obviously it came with a tune from Kenny Bell, and that was a huge step change from the factory stock tune of the automatic gearbox to what they've done. It's a lot more aggressive and nicer and just better. And then this, installing a 1-piece drive shaft, has had the same level of change from stock to that tune, so it's just another step change. Really nice gear changes. All that, some slack still there, but most of it just gone. There is no slack in the drivetrain whatsoever. I do suffer from the rear wheel clunk that a lot of guys do. Mine did not go away. Okay, I want to make that clear that if you install a 1-piece drive shaft, for me, it didn't go away. In terms of driving with it on, there is whine. You're gonna get it because it's a 1-piece drive shaft, it's carbon fiber. So for me, I get a whine from 45 to 55 miles per hour. So you have to be willing to live with that. It is loud. Okay, I can hear it over my exhaust, which is loud in the first place. So be aware of that. Carbon fiber, I don't think it's worth it for the amount of money you have to pay extra for us. Even if you're a street racer, or if you're just a guy like me who just wants the capability, it's not worth the extra money. In the UK, carbon fiber drive shaft is £2,200 plus shipping probably, whereas an aluminium one is much cheaper. And I think the step change that I've experienced will be the same if you had an aluminium drive shaft as opposed to a carbon fiber one. I think carbon fiber just sounds cool. It's a little bit lighter. So yeah, I think the jury's out on that in terms of whether it's worth it for the averager like me. But again, I got a really good deal on it, so I went for it. Apart from that, I think it is a worthwhile mod. Like I said, don't waste your money on carbon fiber. Go aluminium and you'll be just fine. Stuck prop shaft from factory. Use a chisel and a hammer if you like touches. Don't want you doing anything else. And yeah, that's it. Take your time doing it. You know, be careful with the heads on the hex bolts. The little ones which go into the adapter towards the diff pin are apparently, you know, thankfully it didn't happen to me, are very easy to round the heads on, so take your time, don't be at an angle, make sure you're straight, make sure you're good, and yeah, you should be fine. Make sure, this is absolutely critical, I think quite a few people get vibration when they install carbon fiber prop. I am very fortunate that I don't get any vibration. For me, the only issue was noise, which is the diff whine, and that's it. I've had no increase in vibrations or harmonics. Considering I was so much bracing and diff pushing this out, I thought there would be an increase in vibration, but I get nothing, absolutely nothing, which I'm very, very fortunate about. But I think one of the biggest reasons as to why people get these vibrations, because A, they probably don't clean the existing threads on the diff side very well, so the bolts that they put in are actually not torqued properly on the thread, if that makes any sense. And I think because they don't tighten the bolts in a star pattern, I took great care in making sure I tighten everything in the star pattern, so there are so it's absolutely flat against the plates. You know, if you just start going from one side to the other, it doesn't work. It won't work, and I think that's what leads to a slight imbalance and causes vibrations at higher speeds. That's just my theory. I'm probably wrong on it, I don't know, but I can only go off what I've done, and for me, I've had zero issues with regards to vibrations. So that's that. I'm going to drive the car around for another week, and then I'm going to put the half shafts, UPR adjustable toe links, UPR adjustable camber arms, and Steeder vertical arms as well, and we'll see what difference that makes. But so far, very happy, worthwhile mod, particularly if you have an auto. I don't think you'll get as big of a difference in a manual because a lot of that is controlled through your foot and your clutch. Thank you very much. Have a good day.